Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you to the informative session on 5 power tips to ensure cloud security by Kaushik Pandey. I am Ashwini Kumar, your host and marketing specialist at SISA Information Security. As cloud services increase in popularity, a worrying cybersecurity trend has emerged. Volume of cyber attacks on cloud has almost doubled since last year. As digital transformation and work from home culture continues to grow, cloud security is going to be a major focus in 2021. So, introducing CISA. CISA is a global security specialist serving across a wide range of industries with a footprint in more than 35 countries. CISA has unique expertise in payment security domain and forensic investigations. Maintaining a robust security posture is possible with CISA's exceptional set of offerings like CISA Tipper, a data discovery tool, and MDR services. CISA is among 28 organizations to be part of PCI SSC's GEAR committee for the second time in a row. Introducing our today's speaker, Mr. Kaushik Pandey. Kaushik is Principal Consultant and Head of Compliance at CISA Information Security. He has handled several information security audits and has successfully implemented assessment programs at leading banks, third party processors, IT BPOs, airlines, and payment gateways. He is also an authorized lead trainer for CISA's CPSI, a payment security training program for imparting knowledge on payment security implementation and what a QSA can look out for a successful audit and certification from a compliance perspective. In today's session, we'll shed lights on the current scenario with latest threats and vulnerabilities. We'll have a detailed discussion on cloud security and recent data breaches. Further, we'll share some 5 power tips to ensure cloud security in 2021. And in the last, we'll share how to secure cloud infrastructure and final with questions and interaction. Thank you and enjoy the session. Over to you, Kaushik.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Ashwini. And I hope I'm audible. Can you please confirm?
Yes, perfect.
All right, sure. Thanks a lot. Welcome all of you to a new year. Yeah, we are late, around 1 month, I'll say. We are starting in February with respect to the first webinar with respect to CTS, the Compliance and Testing Services BU at CISA. And today we are here with the 5 power tips towards the cloud security. That what exactly organizations, or let's say what exactly you should look out for when you are trying to migrate to cloud, when you're trying to implement security controls into cloud, and whenever you are trying to go ahead and improve your security posture when you are trying to migrate towards the cloud. So how we have structured the entire webinar today is that first of all, initially we'll be talking about the latest threats, the vulnerabilities. Why exactly we are talking about latest threats and vulnerabilities? So that you can get an idea that what exactly is the pain point of the industry? What exactly are the challenges which the organizations with different sectors across the globe are experiencing every day to day? We'll be talking about different types of organizations as well who have got impacted due to this, let's say, the cloud security breaches, or let's say the cloud security misconfigurations and the other things. So once we have understood the reason, the problem statement, the business use case, we'll be going ahead with the next step and we'll be explaining to you that what exactly is the cloud security at a very high level. We'll not be going deeper into it. The reason being is because we assume that you will be having a pretty decent idea about cloud, about a cloud security, about a cloud security provider, or let's say a CSP. So we will be going deeper into the main problem statements, such as what exactly are different cloud security vendors and its applicability. What exactly are the compliances which the organizations and the cloud security providers have to comply, have to apply, have to be, let's say, be in compliance with once they are going ahead and onboarding a particular organization, or let's say a particular company on their platform. So we'll be talking about different compliances, and we'll be talking about one of the cases of a cloud security breach as well. One of the recent cases, I'll say. Post which we'll be talking, or let's say we'll be going into the core of this particular webinar, which is the 5 power tips to ensure cloud security in 2021. And I believe that all of us would be looking forward for our core, because this particular pandemic from the last year, even whatever is continuing this year as well, has taught us one particular thing, that all of us have to be cloud native, if not completely, then at least going into a hybrid model. So we'll be talking about the security on the same manner. And once we have talked about the same, we'll tell you a few of the tips and tricks from how exactly you can secure your cloud infra by onboarding, let's say, a third-party service provider, or let's say third-party consulting organizations. Post which we'll be having the Q&A. So all of you guys can submit the question and answers, or the questions basically. The answers, of course, I'll give. The questions from the chat box or the Q&A section, which is there on the bottom of your screen. You can use that particular thing to let's say come out with any of the questions. We'll be answering all the questions at the end of the webinar. So please do not let's say hesitate in asking any of the questions. And if, let's say, the questions are getting answered during the course of the webinar, then you can type in the Q&A box again that, okay, my question has been answered, so something like that, so that we do not go into those questions at the end of the day. On that particular note, let's start today's webinar. Latest threats and vulnerabilities. I'd like to start the entire webinar with one particular key note, which is complexity is an enemy of cybersecurity. It's not just what exactly I'm saying, or let's say what exactly the industry is saying. It's exactly what all of us can feel at the end of the day. Majority of the organizations today are trying to let's say get into a hybrid multi-tenant cloud-based infrastructure. Majority of the customers, majority of the organizations are going ahead and having 100 plus cybersecurity products in their premises inside their organizations. Is this particular kind of a methodology, is this particular kind of a practice making the organizations more secure? I don't think so. Because as many tools, as many security controls, as many these types of, let's say, things whatever you are adding into your infrastructure, it is opening that many, you can say, the security holes as well. And with respect to these many 100 plus security controls, or let's say 100, when I say security controls means security solution, the security products. These many security products, you need these many security, or let's say experience security. From a perspective, cloud computing ranks as one of the all across their and the majority of their data was actually exfiltrated, or let's say breached, for which we have let's say a different case study as well in the core of this particular presentation. So hold for it, and we'll be discussing about that. But you have to understand around 100 million Americans, let's say, were impacted due to that particular breach over there. So if you'll see the statistics, 79% of the companies that participated in the survey said that, okay, they suffered a breach in the last 18 months. And 43% are saying that they have experienced at least 10 or more breaches in the last 18 months, which gives you an idea as to how many breaches are happening every now and then. I do not even have to tell you that particular thing, right? You can just open the news, you can just open any of the news circulars, you'll find at least 2 to 3 breaches coming down every day. There are tons of actually websites which are just working on data breaches, where you can go ahead and find out so many data breaches happening every day. not just of enterprise, but SMB, small, medium businesses, and enterprise, everything combined. And if you'll see the nerves of the people, the nerves of the organization, around 3x as many as IT professionals are actually more worried about the security of their company financials and intellectual property than security of their house and family. That is what's the terror of this particular, let's say, the breaches and the exfiltration of the data, whatever is happening today. When we're talking about impact on business, when we're talking about the cloud security failure, you will see that so many organizations today are actually getting impacted due to this particular thing. What exactly are those things? It means that, let's say, from a reputational damage, around 18% of the organizations are getting impacted. Fraud and financial loss for around 24%. Data loss for around 26%. Website deface around 18. Interruption of service to another, let's say, 11% of the, let's say, the businesses across the globe. And why exactly these particular things, kind of a things happening today? Is because of the misconfiguration of the servers. As I told you in the very starting, on average, 100 plus security products and organization is implementing inside their premises. And the configuration of these products, these solutions, these security products plays a very, very crucial role in the entire maintenance of cybersecurity inside an organization. Majority of the organizations are investing in other cybersecurity technology and services. And these security failures actually result in the delay of other IT projects and loss of customers as well. Payment of compliance fines and regulatory remediations come as a, let's say, a byproduct. And reduction of the shareholder value, of course, you will feel it. And that is something which is prevalent with the, let's say, many of the recent breaches, whatever you would have seen, whether it's in India, whether it's, let's say, outside India towards the Asia Pacific region and the others as well. As soon as a breach happens, as soon as any of the, let's say, the data gets outside, the entire organization gets impacted. And I think today, I will not be wrong in saying this, that even if, let's say, your PII data is not getting breached, even if it's just the data which is outside, it is just the data which is available on the dark web, available for the people to buy, even if it's just a name, or let's say anything which might be generic in perspective, right? Maybe a name and a zip code, that's it, right? Not the entire address as well. Maybe a mass PII data. Even then, your organizations are getting impacted so much, and the reputational damage, the interruption of service, okay, and all these things will be at stake at the end of the day, believe me, guys. These all, let's say, caveats, these all challenges across the, let's say, industry, um, has led so many organizations in experiencing data loss in the past couple of years. So when we actually read a study about the data losses and, let's say, what all things are going bad, what all things are going wrong, and all those things, we got to know that around 51% of the organizations said that the data loss has occurred due to a misconfiguration of their security controls. 45% said that, okay, this particular thing has not occurred, and 4% actually didn't even knew that this particular thing has occurred or not. And if you'll see the statistics, actually it's around 80% of the organizations who do not understand that they have given extensive access, or let's say extensive privilege access to people till the time the data is not exposed to the outer world. It means that they are just waiting for a catastrophic event to happen, and then only they will realize. And that is one of the real motives why exactly we are here today for this particular webinar, so that all of us can learn from the mistakes what the other organizations have done and accordingly secure our cloud infrastructure. So in a very simple sense, what exactly is the cloud security? Cloud security, and I will not go into the basic definition, but it just refers to the processes, the mechanisms, and the services which are used to control the security, compliance, and the risk of cloud computing. What exactly the cloud computing? You go ahead and host your servers, host your services, host your PaaS or a SaaS platform, or let's say an AS platform on any of the cloud service providers, whether it's AWS, whether it's Azure, whether it's Google Compute Engine, whether it's Oracle, whether it's IBM, you name it, and you will have it. Okay, you are going ahead, let's say, hosting the things over there, hosting your services over there. The security behind it will actually comprehend to the security, the compliance, and the other risks which will be there based upon the cloud computing platform, whatever you are hosting in. And that is what the cloud security will basically rely upon. If you want to understand deeper into this, you will be able to see a lots of different terminologies being used across the cloud, starting from cloud advisory, where let's say we have cloud readiness assessment, suitability report, cloud roadmap, the cost efficiency, the cloud solutions, the migrations, and then lastly, we also have something known as the cloud optimization as well, the change management, request fulfillment, and let's say all those things combined. So, in a very simple sense, in a very layman sense, if we have to understand that why exactly organizations tend to go towards the cloud, why exactly are they, let's say, going ahead the cloud? So, first of all, we have to understand that majority of the organizations today are going and trying to adapt something known as a public cloud infrastructure. And believe me, majority of the customers have gotten too much comfortable as well with the security of public clouds. They want to make sure that, or let's say, we have to just make sure that the cloud service providers stay vigilant and committed to whatever cybersecurity measures they have, let's say, committed to you, or let's say, promised to you. And if you'll see, majority of the organizations, even the business critical applications as well, are moving to public clouds as we speak. Majority of, let's say, organizations are following a particular approach, which is known as the lift and shift approach, where let's say you are lifting a particular product, a particular solution from your enterprise, and then going ahead and hosting it on the cloud, where basically your cloud migrate, the cloud optimize, and then let's say the other things will come into picture. The advisories will basically revolve around the security solutions which you will be implementing. So what exactly has happened till now in this particular webinar? Let's do a very quick revision so that the upcoming slides will be able to understand. We saw that the enterprises, the organizations across the globe are getting impacted due to so many vulnerabilities, so many caveats which are happening towards cloud security. And what's the reason behind this? The reason behind this is that the security misconfiguration, the control misconfiguration, or let's say in a very simple sense, misconfiguration is the right word over here, because of which so many challenges are happening across the globe. Many of the organizations are trying to go to a hybrid cloud data security model where they have some on-premise, they have something on cloud, but they are not able to manage both of these things. And that is what is leading to so many, let's say, challenges. So that is what we studied in the very initial slides. Once we went into, let's say, once we went ahead, we saw that if, let's say, this particular security misconfiguration is exploited by a hacker, by an intruder, then what exactly are the repercussions? It can, let's say, revolve around the compliances. It can revolve around your reputational damage. It can revolve around so many ample amount of things. And we also discussed that nowadays, it's not just about the PII data. Now the things have gotten way ahead. And now we are talking about any data as soon as it gets compromised, as soon as it gets out of hand, everything gets on a toss, guys, believe me. And that is something which we have been looking at from so many days as well, being in the, let's say, cybersecurity industry. And then we saw something about the cloud security, that what exactly is the cloud security? Why exactly? Because whatever breaches, whatever things are happening, we have to learn from these things and accordingly implement the cloud security. So before implementing the cloud security, let's try to understand that the cloud security, or let's say the cloud security, let's say methodologies or whatever we are talking about, is built on the cloud security platform, or let's say the cloud platform on which you are hosting all of the services. Now, when I say services, it means the different services which you are giving to the end consumer, or in a B2B model. Means it can be either B2C or it can be a B2B model. And there are few other models as well, which can be prevalent. which can revolve around the billing, the payments, the payment gateway, analytics, and all. From a banking perspective, from a retail perspective, we have so many different levels of standards, starting from let's say SOC compliances, the AICPA SOC compliances, SOC compliances, ranging down to the ISO compliances as well in the world. And that is what the applicability of cloud security is across the different organizations. But if you go deeper into this particular let's say cloud security, so as to understand that how exactly a consumer interacts with a cloud hosted platform, a cloud hosted infrastructure, that is where you will understand that there is something known as the integration fabric in between, which is actually joining the customers with the suppliers and the partners and the backend systems. So whatever exactly this integration fabric, it's nothing but the let's say the API integration, the let's say the application integration between the products which a particular consumer is using at the end of the day, and the different sets of servers, systems, and the user computing applications, etc., which are hosted by a particular cloud infrastructure. And the cybersecurity is basically the platform on which everything gets built over here. So if you understand this, it will be very easy for all of us to actually implement cloud-based security into the infrastructure, as we would understand that, okay, what exactly is in our control and what exactly is not in our control. So of course, let's say from an end user computing, the traditional data center, the applications, and then the cloud, which can be a private or a public or a managed, okay, we have so many ample amount of things which can be managed by us. And accordingly, let's say organizations can secure their core infrastructure also in the very same manner. So when once we have understood the cloud security, once we have understood what all different levels of integration are there, so that organizations can go ahead and implement security inside their premises, it will be worthwhile to understand the different compliances and a few cases of a cloud security breach as well. So if you'll see around, let's say if we talk about the monetary perspective, the unauthorized access to cloud assets can lead to losses of around greater than $50,000 in less than an hour. I don't think so. That is something which, let's say, can be a food of thought for majority of the organizations across the globe, right? And if you'll see the, let's say, the different things, this is the different things, whatever are going ahead across the industry with respect to the with respect to the pain points. What exactly organizations are saying is that although the cloud adoption across the organization, across the industry continues to expand in the recent future, the cybersecurity teams are still trying, or let's say playing the catch-up game. What exactly is the catch-up game? It means that we, or let's say the cybersecurity teams are not, let's say, capable enough as of now. I'm sorry, guys, but I would say this, that we are not capable enough so that we can catch hold of those people and can stay one step ahead before even they, let's say, do anything bad to our organization, to our assets, in any of the cases whatsoever. And that is the very reason why exactly you will see that most companies migrate huge data sets to the cloud that take hours of time to complete. And when the data is in motion during this particular thing, that is the state where it is most vulnerable as well. And what is the reason behind this? Is because the basics of cloud security till date is not even understood by majority of the organizations. And what exactly the basics of this cloud, let's say the cloud security and all? I will be very simple over here and be talking about a shared responsibility model. Organizations, even till today, believe me, guys, they are not even sure that, okay, what exactly is their responsibility and what exactly is the, let's say, the cloud service the provider's responsibility. As per the survey results, around 67% of the organizations in 2020 said that the SaaS application, the shared responsibility model, is quite confusing for them. And they don't even understand what are security controls they have to implement, what are security controls have to be implemented by majority of the let's say the cloud service providers. So just try to understand, and let's just try to see that if, let's say, these types of irregularities or these types of confusions prevail across the industry, then how exactly organizations will be able to secure themselves? If you look from a compliance perspective, then there are something known as the laws and the regulations, of course, which is depending upon the geography and the laws of land. You can be going ahead with the HIPAA, you can be going ahead with the Sabanas Oxley Act. If you're dealing with the payment card data, then of course the PCI DSS will come into perspective. And there are different things as well. Let's say, like the business continuity data recovery, the logs on audit trails, and the client-specific compliance and data isolation requirements. So, what exactly is the gist behind this local regulatory requirements about data storage, transmission, processing? It means that the data, whatever, let's say, you or your organization is storing, processing, or transmitting on the customer's behalf, you have to secure it. Now, how exactly you can prove that yes, you are securing that particular data, which belongs to an end consumer, which belongs, let's say, a consumer like, let's say, you or me, when we are representing the end consumer, the entire, let's say, the geography of end consumers. That is where these compliances kick in. And that is where these compliances make sure that your or mine organization are securing the, let's say, the customer's data. And accordingly, they can move ahead and secure the entire infrastructure. So if you see one of the, let's say, I discussed as well in the starting that one of the biggest breaches, not one of the biggest breaches, yeah, but one of the biggest breaches towards the cloud security provider. What exactly happened was the, let's say, a US bank getting compromised. And how exactly it, let's say, it happened, you can see it from this particular, let's say, pictorial representation, where Tor network, or let's say VPN service was used so that the anonymity of the source can be maintained. They were able to exploit something known as an SSRF vulnerability. SRF basically means the server side request forgery vulnerability. What exactly that is basically, let's say, it will trick a particular server into executing commands on behalf of a remote user, whosoever is trying to connect with it, and enabling the user to treat the server, or let's say treat that particular request as a proxy for his or her request, and get access to the non-public endpoints. So if you'll see in this particular, let's say, scenario, it was able to exploit, let's say, the vulnerability on this EC2 with full access with IAM role because of a misconfigured mod security WAF. What is a WAF? WAF is a web application firewall. It was able to exploit this particular thing because the policies, because the signatures were not rightly configured. Because of this, this EC2 metadata service was actually exploited. Now, this EC2 metadata service was not supposed to be exposed to the public web, which is right as well. But because this vulnerability over here with the, let's say, the misconfigured mod security WAF and the intermediary server, the entire thing got compromised. And accordingly, the AWS S3 bucket as well was compromised at that particular point in time. So if you'll see at the top, let's say the intruders, or let's say those hackers, actually sent out an email to these guys, this particular banking institution, and they said that okay, there appears to be some leaked S3 data of yours in someone's GitHub or just please let me bring them down, and of course cost as well on the same. And once, let's say, the FBI, the US DOD, and all those, let's say, guys got involved, and accordingly they started performing the investigation. They they found that it was done by a Seattle woman. Um, Her name was Paige, basically. She was doing cloud service provider. On this entire activity, what she used to do is that she used a script or which was searching for all types of misconfigured servers, misconfigured technologies, whatever has been implemented across. And once she used to get access, she used to tell this particular the intruders, the hackers, take out from the organization. Okay, which so once the DoD, the Department of Defense, and the FBI went deeper and understood, they got to know that this particular bank was just one of the victims. 30 other organizations got, or let's say, were also impacted due to this particular lady, or let's say due to the script which this particular lady used, and accordingly, let's say, understood these many vulnerabilities and sold these vulnerabilities off as well. And in this particular case, it was the case deployed over there. So from this particular case study, what exactly we understood? We understood that although, let's say, organizations are implementing so many controls, so they are investing so much as well on these cloud security providers, on these cloud service providers, but you cannot trust anyone at any point in time, right? And we'll see in a few slides as well that where exactly the shared responsibility starts, and where exactly you have to, all of us have to make sure that the data, whatever we are hosting on top of it, how exactly we can secure those data elements at all the times. If you'll see one of the other cases, in October 2020, the US office of the let's say the OCC basically fined a bank around $60 million because they decommissioned a hardware containing wealth management data for two of its US data centers in 2016. Means it was a case of 2016. They dumped, or let's say they might have, let's say, decommissioned these servers, decommissioned these databases, maybe the hardwares, the servers, without properly, let's say, secure deletion, without the proper secure deletion perspectives. And accordingly, those guys got fined as well. So imagine it be possible. Let's say the security is, but each that breach might have happened around 2 or 4 years or 5 years back because we didn't maintain the security hygiene at that particular point in time. We thought that okay, let's decommission this particular thing. This particular let's say server got, or let's say I had a fire, or let's say I got fire in the data center. At that time, I just decommissioned all the servers, or let's say the particular server went down. I was not able to access it. Let's decommission it. Why? Because I need to get my business up and running. So I didn't even give, let's say, any importance to the data what was actually residing on those servers, on those databases, on those hard drives, on those disk states. And accordingly, I just said that okay, let's get rid of it. And see, in this particular case, that is what, let's say, impacted this particular organization like anything. And that is what is basically the need of the hour as well for today, the readiness gap. Organizations, your or mine organizations, whosoever are planning to go towards the cloud, who are planning to go and migrate and host their infrastructure towards the cloud, say that there's a huge gap between the current and the planned cloud usage and maturity of their cloud security program as well. And this is not something which, let's say, you or me are saying. Around 92% of the organizations are saying this today, that the cloud usage and the, let's say, the planned cloud usage and the current usage, there's a huge gap in between. And and why exactly is so? I think many of us, from an enterprise perspective, might be able to map this thing as well. The cloud services and the applications, which are basically organizations are going ahead and hosting the infrastructure on the cloud, are actually hosted by a business unit organizations, which are outside of the purview of their centralized IT and cybersecurity teams. This is something which all of us would be able to relate to as well. Your core, your central IT security team might not even know that, okay, you have a cloud infrastructure, and you would be having a different cloud infrastructure altogether in perspective. Because what your business, what your organization thinks is that collaboration with the cybersecurity team uh, will be threatening to the throttle speed, will be threatening to the velocity with which you will be moving ahead. Because they'll be talking about a lots and lots of security controls, lots of security configurations, which has to be done right. And that's why they'll say, I'll have a different business unit, I'll have a different thing altogether, and I'll host it differently. I'll keep it separate from, let's say, the enterprise IT, the cybersecurity teams, and all those things. And what it results in? It results in the velocity outspacing security readiness and the need for a cultural shift in how organizations approach cybersecurity. Many of the organizations which we audit, majority of the organizations, I should say, which we audit, we understand, we get to know that their enterprise IT security is much more stringent as compared to their cloud security practices, whatever they are trying to, let's say, achieve over there. And actually, if you'll see as well, if let's say the security policies and everything would have been intact, would have been in sync, would have been governed by the same practices, majority of the organization might not have got impacted due to the breaches, whatever have happened. And that is something which we have even seen in our forensics analysis as well, once we have done so many forensics analysis. So this entire thing till now would have given you a pretty good idea about what exactly are the problem statements and what exactly is the cloud security, and what exactly, let's say, you should be looking at once you are implementing cloud security. Now, if you have all these things cleared off in your mind, this is the time where you understand that, okay, what all things you have to do to implement cloud security. The first one starts with cloud data encryption. Believe me or not, guys, but this will be your responsibility. This is nobody else's responsibility. The cloud service provider will not be encrypting your data. It is your responsibility. Even if you are using their S3 containers, which has been encrypted, and majority of you will come back and say, oh, no, 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 the S3 containers are encrypted, I've got it over there. But did you even check the configurations of it? Did you check the, let's say, who all can access that particular S3 bucket? And when accessing, are those things encrypted? Are those encrypted? Are those things encrypted at a hardware level, or at a database level, or at a column or a file level? Did you even try to go deeper into it? No. You just saw a tick box over there and saw encrypted. Okay, I'm good, I'm secure. No, you are not. And that is where the shared responsibility matrix will come into picture, and that is where you need to make sure that the data is secured. The cloud data, whatever you are, let's say, hosting over there, is secured, whether it's in transit or at rest. Both of these things have to be secured in the infrastructure, because you have to agree, or you have to understand one particular thing: you are using a public cloud infrastructure. The responsibility of the data in transit, the responsibility of the data at rest belongs to you and nobody else. So if you'll see one of the, let's say, the case studies, or let's say the things, or whatever we saw in the recent timelines, you would see that, let's say, around 59% of the organizations actually said that, let's say, their API keys, the encryption keys, the admin credentials, and all those things are stored on servers. 55% said in our source code library, 54% in public cloud object stores, and 31% in HTML codes. And why exactly this is happening? It's happening because the development teams are moving too fast based upon the business requirements. And they're not thinking about that where they are placing these secrets. Now, these particular secrets, I'm not just counting these API keys or the encryption keys, I'm also talking about the data as well, wherever you are keeping the data. Because if you'll see that particular banking institution breach, many of the, let's say, the 100 million customers which were impacted, majority of the stuff over there was not encrypted at all. The best practices will be to, of course, have a least privilege in HSM or a key vault over there. HSM stands for a hardware security module or a host security module, and a key vault is where, let's say, you can keep your let's say keys securely, and the keys will, or let's say these particular keys will never come out of the particular let's say the thing at any point in time. So what exactly we understood from here is that overprivileged accounts is directly proportional to unprotected cloud secrets, and the data at rest or in transit will be your responsibility, will be your let's say your organization's responsibility at all the times, irrespective of let's say whichever EAS, PaaS, or SaaS, whatever model you are going ahead. The second power security tip over here is about the identity and access management, the IAM. I believe majority of us are quite familiar with the identity and access management. That what exactly is this? So basically, if you are logging in using any of the device or platforms, you have to log in via multi-factor authentication at let's say all the times. And what exactly it will help you? It'll help you in making sure that only the right individuals, only the rightful individuals are actually accessing your systems. If you just do a normal Google search right now and try to understand, you will see that this is the primary cause of multiple breaches that have happened across the globe, the identity and access management. Because organizations actually do not even know that who has access to what, who has access to what particular kind of a data at any given point in time. These human errors, these excessive let's say permissions, has led to so many breaches which have happened across the globe. The organizations today actually based upon the EAS and the PaaS environments are struggling with the least privileged accesses for identities and their data. And why exactly is it so? It's because they do not even bother about this, one of the aspects. The second aspect is that even after implementation as well, they were not able to log into the servers. So they removed those IAM keys, or let's say the SH public keys or private keys, or the multi-factor authentication. And accordingly, that was still removed after that as well, and organizations got breached with respect to same. Apart from this, what exactly is the second use case? It means that let's say even if I as a user do not require that particular privilege, even then I have the privilege, because it was just acting as a mandatory access control for all of the people. And accordingly, everyone who was at let's say IAM have got access to the jump server directly. So that is where you will see that if you have to protect this identity and access management, you have to have a very strong access control matrix, access control list implemented across your organization. Apart from this, the second thing is about the multi-factor authentication. Organizations, if you'll see, around 51% of them said that, okay, we adopted MFA for our most critical cloud services. And 49% are saying that they have deployed something known as a user activity monitoring. So what exactly is this user activity monitoring is? That it's kind of a new technology, it's kind of a new thing where organizations have implemented something known as a user entity behavior analytics solution. So what exactly it'll do is that it'll have something known as an adaptive authentication, which will, let's say, throw a secondary challenge as soon as it understands that there is an anomaly in nature. And they will ask that, okay, let's have a few security questions. Let's have a few date of birth check, or let's say some credentials check, something like that. And accordingly, they will provide the access. Okay, so this is how exactly, let's say, the identity and access management can be implemented, can be secured inside your organization once you are going ahead and implementing the same. The third point over here is about the endpoint security. Majority of us have actually forgotten about the endpoint security, the laptops using which we are accessing. But guys, majority of the keys are actually generated from these systems, or let's say via these systems. You do not have an access to a cloud base, a cloud let's say server directly, because you are not going to the cloud, right? You are trying to access a particular cloud infrastructure from your system. From many of the security compliances perspective, it might happen that your endpoints are out of scope, but that doesn't let's say, says that, okay, these particular endpoints cannot be the source of the exfiltration, the breaches, whatever are happening today. And that is why the endpoint security also is a very, very, let's say, important topic over here about the endpoint security and how exactly you can protect it by, of course, by antivirus. The normal antivirus will not be able to help you. So you need to go ahead with the machine learning, with an AI based and antivirus systems. You need to have network threat prevention enabled. You need to have a DLP solution enabled. Your system should be patched. Their security baseline should be as per as the CIS benchmarks, and hence so forth. So the endpoint security as well, let's say, has a very, very crucial role. What's next? The next is about the real-time incident alerting as well. This is very, very important, guys. The real-time incident alerting. And why exactly this particular thing is important? Because majority of the organizations today disable logging for capturing an audit trail of of cloud security, and that has been, let's say, found out based upon the 31% of the respondents, or let's say 31% of the executives who said that, okay, we are not capturing the audit trails, or let's say all the activity whatever that is happening on my cloud setup. And if it's not happening, then again, the same thing I'll repeat, you are just waiting for a catastrophic event to happen, and accordingly, let's say, at that time it will be very, very late. So real-time incident alerting is one of the very, very most important requirements, one of the very most important controls which organizations should implement at the end of the day. And last but not the least is the regulatory governance. Now, this particular regulatory governance is not just about the different compliances which you have to maintain. That is something which, of course, you will be maintaining based upon your, let's say, the compliance team, based upon your legal team, based upon the lawyers, based upon, let's say, the different cloud service providers as well, because even they have to maintain the compliances with respect to their infrastructure, not your infrastructure. Please remember, not your infrastructure at all. Okay. So in that particular perspective, it is very, very important for us to understand the shared responsibility model. That, okay, what exactly is the shared responsibility model? And this is what exactly is. We have just taken a reference from Microsoft, but it's the same, which is, let's say, applicable throughout as well. That the information, the data, the devices, and the accounts and the identities will always be the responsibility retained by the customer. You are going with IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS, whatever you are going ahead with. Now, identity and directory infrastructure, applications, network controls, and operating system, their security, it will vary based upon the responsibility between SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS platforms. And then the physical host, the physical network, and the physical data center is where, let's say, your cloud service provider will pitch in, and they'll be talking about these stuff at all the times. All right. So from here onwards, please make sure that the information, the data, the devices, the mobiles, and the PCs which are used to connect to it, the accounts and identities as well, which is basically your identity and access management, the IAM, and the other things, will be always your responsibility, will be always the customer's responsibility, whosoever has hosted that particular infrastructure on top of the cloud service provider. And that is what you will see in this particular case as well, that this particular is, let's say, a mapping, or let's say a differential analysis between a 2019 2020 study, where in 2020 around 8% of the executives only understood what exactly is the shared responsibility between a cloud service provider and, let's say, their organization, whereas in 2019 it was 18%. So you can say that we are deprecating as per the time goes by. So these were basically the 5 power tips which can help you or your organization in securing the infrastructure. Let's do a quick recap of this as well. The first one starts with identity and access management, where you have to make sure that the ACLs, the access control list, which are there to access the platform, are quite stringent enough. You are reviewing it frequently, and accordingly, you have a pretty robust architecture over there, followed by multi-factor authentication, not just for the production guys, not just for the production, but even for the development as well, even for the UAT as well. I'll I cannot tell you right now, but yes, there are many of the breaches which have happened in the recent past where organizations have got access from the development, or let's say the hackers, not the organization, but the hackers have got access to the from the development environment to the production environment because of a misconfigured ACL. This particular ACL is from a network level and from an access level as well. So multi-factor authentication need not be only at the, let's say, at the production level. Please go ahead and implement the UAT, the test, the dev, and all those you can say things as well. And it's not that much difficult as well, guys. I'm telling you, it's pretty easy. It's just a configuration level change which you have to do, and of course that will impact your let's say development team, or let's say the different teams interface. But that's worth it. Tomorrow, if you are facing any let's say breach, it's worth as compared to spending one, or let's say spending 30 seconds or 20 seconds more in accessing a particular thing. Next starts with an endpoint security, then the real-time incident alerting, where you have to monitor all the audit traces whatever are going, and send the response actions or the response alerts within real time. Then we talk about the different regulatory governances, where we talk about the shared responsibility models and who should maintain what. These were the 5 security tips which your organization, if you are able to implement, then you will be in flying colors, guys. Believe me. So how exactly to secure the cloud infrastructure based upon, let's say, the different consulting organization, different service provider, what you can onboard is that you can engage with them for strategy and governance. They can review your security architecture, your engineering. They can perform a threat vulnerability management, where they can see that how exactly you are coping up with the vulnerability practices, vulnerability assessment, pen test practices. Do you have any cyber forensics which you are doing at frequent activity? The anti-access management, the data privacy and protection, the emerging technologies, and all those things. Many of you might come back to me and say that, okay, why exactly do we require cyber forensics? But believe me, guys, once a year, you should perform an internal forensic investigation. That will help you in understanding if a malware would have been there inside your organization and you would have no idea. An average time that an organization, let's say, takes to understand that yes, they have been breached, there has been malware, varies, and the average time varies from 200 days or 150 days and hence so forth as well. So even cyber forensics and internal forensics will be very, very crucial. Apart from that, on a frequent basis, based upon the different compliances, based upon your internal information security policy, perform the VAPT practices as well, the vulnerability assessment and pen test practices. Now, these particular practices need not be done only at the network layer. Starting from the network, internal and external, going to the application, internal, external, going to the mobile applications, internal and external, again, over there as well, and with respect to the different IoT data integration platforms as well, whatever you might be having at the end of the day. All right. Now, that is what sums up the entire presentation, the entire webinar over here. So what are the things we studied? What are the things we reviewed? We started from a problem statement. We tried to understand that, let's say, what exactly the organizations are facing from a problem statement perspective. Then we understood the cloud security. What exactly is cloud security practices? We understood one of the breaches, what has happened. Then we went into the 5 security part tips, how to secure your cloud infrastructure. And then we saw that how exactly you can onboard a third-party service provider, or let's say consulting organization, in making sure that your cloud infrastructure is intact and secure in nature. On that particular note, I'll just open the forum to for any of the Q&A. If you have any, let's have a discussion on the same.
Thank you, Kaushik, for this informative session. That is pretty very much in-depth descriptions of every situation, as well as taking examples. So let's take the questions right now. We have a question from Mr. Srikant Salunke. Does that mean we should rely upon on-prem KMS solution to encrypt cloud data? This was asked at 12:10.
All right. So basically, not at all. I can use even the cloud KMS, or let's say even I can use the cloud HSM as well for encryption of let's say these data elements. What you need to make sure over there is that the keys which you are using for the encryption decryption has to be secured by you. The people who have access to let's say the API calls to the let's say the HSM to let's say the cloud HSM has to be secured. That is what the security you have to implement. The only thing how exactly it varies is that when you're having an on-prem HSM, majority of the cases, you physically go to that particular HSM and then enter the keys and perform all the key stuff, which is of course secure in nature. But it is again, you might not be able to scale it enough at any given point in time, especially like let's say when the pandemic happened, right? And if you want to access the HSM, then of course it's a challenge. So when moving to cloud, the cloud is not a challenge at that time. We have to just make sure that how exactly we are able to control the access to that HSM, make sure that the secure algorithms are used for the key generation, for the key encryption, for the key decryption, and all those things, and how exactly you are able to maintain a crypto period as well around the particular keys. With that particular things in hand, you will be good enough to implement anything on the cloud as well. Ashwini?
Yes. Again, Shrikant asked that he recommends, right? We can also use better tools for accessing cloud resources like PIM or PAM.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, that requires investment. PIM and PAM do not come cheap. So depending upon the organization, if you have that much budget, please go ahead and let's say have these many solutions as well on board. Absolutely.
We have question from Kinshuk Saxena. Hi, can you lay more light on WAF misconfiguration which caused the SSRF query to run in your breach example?
All right. So basically, if you can go ahead and search on the web, you will be able to identify the entire misconfiguration on. But what exactly happened over here was that let's say the policy, the signature, which used to detect the Ssrf vulnerability over there was only in detect mode, or let's say mostly in learning mode. It was not configured so that let's say organize or that particular organizer would be able to prevent it, and that is the very reason why exactly let's say they were able to exploit the SRF as well over there, because the particular thing, of course, it really let's say it generated an alert, but it didn't prevent it, it didn't block that particular access, because of which this particular thing happened.
Uh, Parthasati asked, does CISA perform complete cybersecurity review and secure coding practices? Yes, we do, Parthasati.
Mhm.
And yes, we have
Right.
question from Mr. SK sir. What should be our strategy to deploy critical patches in production?
Always follow a change management process. You should first of all test it. That particular testing will depend upon where exactly, let's say, you want to deploy it. Like many of the organizations we have seen that they have a test environment, and they have a UAT environment or staging environment, and then they have the production environment. So it means that they are performing two tests before they even push a particular patch into a production environment. All of these things will depend upon the criticality of the security patch. Now, if let's say it's a very critical security patch, like let's say 0-day vulnerability or something like that, like when the heartbleed came, when the poodle came, all these types of vulnerabilities came, right? At that time, you might not have, let's say, that much luxury of, let's say, performing these many tests. So in that particular case, perform it on the UAT or testing, one of them, deploy it into the production. But once you have deployed into the production, keep monitoring all the logs, all the audit trails, and all the network traffic logs as well, whatever is going back and forth, so that you can understand in the case of any of the discrepancy, and again revert back to the original state. Ashwin.
Thank you, Kaushik. We have question from Yuvarani. Why organizations disable real-time logging?
Because they get too many alerts. Real-time logging is basically, so what happens is that organizations tend to, let's say, when they configure the SIM solution within their premises, right? In the starting, they get too many alerts from that particular solution. Majority of them are false positives in nature. And that is where they, let's say, block the real-time monitoring, because they say my emails are getting spammed, or let's say my email alerts are getting spammed and all those things. The solution for this is that you need to go ahead and reconfigure those security policies which are triggering these many alerts. One of the most famous breaches about the target, right? So the target was a US merchant, and whatever things happened, 40 million cards were stolen, 70 million PI data was stolen from there. And what happened was that they had three different vendors of SIM solutions who sent them the alerts. But even then, they didn't do anything because they thought it was a false positive, because they used to get these many alerts on any other real-time basis. That is the very reason why exactly organizations tend to not use it. It means that you have to tweak your configurations, you have to tweak your let's say policies, and accordingly you will be able to get the right responses over there. Ashwini.
Yes. Good session. Shusil says good session. Is there a new PCI DSS for wallet?
PCI DSS for wallet? No, not yet. They are planning to come out with something, but as of now, no, nothing. Maybe this year, mostly.
So, another question from Yuva Rani: Has a MFA breach happened before? What about the pass the cookie attack?
Pass the cookie attack will be basically on the application level, and will have nothing to do from an let's say an anti and access management perspective. It'll be more from let's say when a consumer, or let's say when we are trying to access from a web UI perspective. But even if, let's say, pass on a cookie attack, you have separate different parameters as well, using which you can perform the authentication of the user and not just rely on a particular cookie for authentication. Of course, the cookie will be a unique variable which you'll be using for let's authentication. But apart from that, you can have different parameters, like let's say the session headers can have different parameters, different information inside, which will be help you to authenticate a particular user uniquely. That's the first point. Second time, multi-factor authentication, let's say, I'll say bypass has happened. But again, there's nothing known as 100% security. If we are just trying to reduce the risk exposure as much as we can. So multi-factor authentication helps us to reduce the risk exposure as much as we can. Ashwini?
So, we have a question from Nilesh Yadav. How does the cloud infrastructure formation and the cloud security both go along, or both go simultaneously as a part of architecture design, which is to be incorporated?
So cloud security formation, and what was the other thing?
Cloud infrastructure formation and cloud security both go along.
See, okay, let's take a different use case over here. So initially, when IT systems were developed, right, when IT systems came into perspective, they never thought about security at that time. They just thought that, okay, I need to let's say come out with the, let's say, market changing thing, which was the information technology, the IT systems, the firewalls, routers, whatever the cases might be, so that we can revolutionize the digital infrastructure. After that, we thought about security because of the malicious intruders. And accordingly, we built a particular, let's say, layer around the IT practices. Now, when I'm talking about a cloud architecture, from the inception of the architecture, once you are starting with, let's say, defining the security groups, defining the different networks, define the different services which you will be using for your cloud infrastructure, defining the different users who will be accessing your cloud infrastructure. If you can take, let's say, take into perspective the secure practices from the inception itself, you will not have challenges once you grow bigger, once you have gone into the production environment, or once you have hosted the entire infrastructure on the cloud. Because at that time only you'll know that, okay, only 5 people need to have access to my cloud infrastructure based upon the need to know all the least privilege necessary basis. All the 5 users will be going via multi-factor authentication. All the 5 users will be working on something which is the, let's say I told you as well, UEBA, that is the user entity behavior analytics. The same thing goes from a security group ACL perspective as well. The same thing goes for the different solutions which you'll be using over there. So that's how, let's say, these two things mingle with each other. Ashwini?
Thank you, Kaushik. Since the time is up, we'll take two more questions, and post which we'll answer all your questions through emails. Uh, uh, Question is from Pradhan Manwar. Does cloud providers provide best practices to follow their customer before moving their infrastructure over cloud? What all
Absolutely.
precautionary right, what all precautionary
So
measures cloud
absolutely,
providers recommend?
hmm. Okay.
recommend
So
or
absolutely, they provide a lots and lots of security best practices from their let's say from their infrastructure as well, because majority of the services which you tend to use, like I'll give you an example, like AWS KMS, right? The key management system. Now, you or me, as a, let's say, as a consumer of that particular service, will have no idea that how exactly I should securely configure that particular service. So in that particular case, I have to refer to the KMS deployment guide, or let's say the KMS implementation guide, so as to understand how to secure it. Different things, let's say the same thing goes for the, let's say, the message queue service as well, which comes from Amazon, which works on the same pattern. But okay, how exactly I should secure it, the messaging queuing services, so that it doesn't result in any of the denial of service, or let's say any of the different types of attack, and how exactly I can configure it. So all of these will have the implementation guide from the cloud, and accordingly you should implement it. That will follow the security best practices. Ashwini?
yeah, thank you, Kaushik. One last question by SK. 80% of the cloud tools we are using are open source. From compliance perspective, how will you address it?
Open source is not at all a challenge for compliances. Open source is just that you should be able to, or let's say, your team should have the competency or the capability to configure it securely. Because you have to understand from this perspective, open source is that the functionality, the code base, and everything is known to all. It's not something which, let's say, you or your organization only knows, right? It means that if somebody gets hold of the application, if somebody gets hold of that particular configuration, wherever you are deploying it on a particular server or a particular system, then they know the entire architecture. Accordingly, they'll be able to change the configurations and then go ahead with it. So what you need to make sure over here is that how to restrict the access even to that particular configuration file, to that particular configuration system. And once you have a particular configuration intact, you should have a FIM solution, a file integrity monitoring solution, something like that, so that if somebody or the other changes the configuration, you should get a real-time alert. And accordingly, you will be able to respond on the same. Ashwini?
Yes. Question from John Paul UC from question: does it need to perform a regular forensic activity? Where should be more focusing? For example, network level or server level?
It should be server level at all the times. Because even if, let's say, okay, so let's talk from a risk perspective. So the firewalls getting compromised and the malware sitting at the firewall, I'll not say is not possible, but from a probability perspective, it's less probable that you will have. The servers are the systems which gets more compromised, let's say, which have, let's say, the probability of getting more compromised at the end of the day. So server level forensics, internal forensics should be one of the solutions which you should implement, and you should perform it once a year, at least once a year. And which all systems? Of course, you should start with, first of all, your core systems, which is handling the largest amounts of data at any given point in time. That's the first. The second would be your web, or let's say the public interface systems, or your third-party service provider interface systems, because that's from where, let's say, an intruder might have come in, and accordingly they could have performed something or the other. Ashwini?
So thank you, Kaushik. Thank you everyone for joining this wonderful session. We'll be answering all the questions, all the unanswered questions shortly in next couple of hours. I would request everyone to stay tuned to our LinkedIn pages. We'll be releasing the recording very soon. And if there are any questions post the session or post the recording, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you, everyone.